Good evening. Welcome to Midweek Study. This is a new series presented by Bradford Christian College. My name is Timothy Barrett, and for now, at least, I will be hosting this. I don't know how it might change in the future, what things might happen, but yeah, this is Midweek Study hosted by Bradford Christian College. And let me just tell you briefly, Bradford Christian College is an online Christian college that offers a number of degrees. It's an fully online program, but you're not alone in that program. We provide a mentor for you that will walk with you through your program of study, um, meet with you via Zoom, talk to you about your studies, challenge you with additional questions beyond what you might be finding in the materials that you're working through, give you an opportunity to explore additional topics in your course and get deeper and better understanding of the concepts that you're covering. Now, Bradford Christian College offers degrees, bachelor degrees in, let's see if I can remember all these, uh, Bachelor of Arts in Theological Studies, Bachelor of Arts in Christian Leadership. That's a wonderful program for anybody who's thinking of going into some kind of particularly nonprofit organization and trying to manage that and maybe have influence in the political arena or in other ways. Um, Bachelor of Arts in Christian Counseling. Now, that Bachelor of Arts in Christian Counseling is deeply rooted in the counseling method and program developed by Dr. J. Adams. So it's strongly uh, biblical based counseling. Um, what else? Bachelor of Arts in Christian Education, both at the elementary and the secondary level. That program, Bachelor of Arts in Christian Education, is particularly helpful for um, those newly married, those who are planning to homeschool their children. It's a great way to get um, build a philosophy of Christian education, to develop a curriculum and really follow through with that. But it's also designed to enable somebody to begin teaching at a Christian school. And so it's a full orbed program. The um, At the secondary level, right, there's going to be areas of emphasis that you would choose in terms of what areas you would want to teach in. Um, yeah, I think that's our bachelor programs. We do also do have a Master of Arts in Theological Studies as well that's available for anyone who would, you've got your bachelor's, you want to go on to that next higher degree. Again, Bradford Christian College, link is in the description below. You can go to the website and see information there. You can contact Bradford Christian College to get more information. They'll be happy to send out a welcome packet. Um, if you're thinking of a particular program, one of the bachelor degrees or something, they can send out an overview of what it would look like to complete that program. So yeah, maybe it's right for you, maybe it's right for somebody you know. Bradford Christian College, an online program, but you're not alone. You have a mentor to walk with you through the program. Okay, so what is midweek study? Well, midweek study is just an idea that I guess I came up with, and really, I would say it's more of a selfish idea than anything else. I just have a stack of stuff that I would like to read through, and I find myself always getting distracted. So I thought, well, what if I schedule a a time each week that I would go online and I could um, just read through the stack of stuff online, and you could follow along with me, and together we could, um, you know, uh, learn from the things that I have in my stack of stuff to read. Okay, and so that's the idea. And so each week, hopefully, um, I will be working through something to read. I'm sure that things I've got to read will take more than 1 week to work through. But that's the idea. Work through and think about, talk about. Hopefully, I can get comments from viewers that can ask questions, can maybe give even better insight than what I can give to these things. So that's the idea here. Now, um, so the question is then what am I going to start with? What, like I've got a stack of things, right? It's going to be hard to pick. Well, what I picked, um, I think relates to contemporary issue, right? You maybe have heard of the term Christian nationalism. You've maybe heard some of that debate about is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a right thing? Is it a wrong thing? And such. And so, um, rather than wading through all the palaver of contemporary discussion about Christian nationalism and, so many people trying to um, establish their own variety of Christian nationalism, maybe, or whatever it might be. I came across something that I think could really help bring clarity to this. I say that I haven't read this um, paper in its entirety. I've skimmed through it. I think I know the direction that it's going, but we'll discover it together, and maybe we'll find that the conclusions that this individual comes to in this paper aren't right. I don't know, but we'll discover. Okay. But here it is. It is an election sermon. And the title of the election sermon is Christianity, a National Law. Okay. So Christianity, a National Law. I thought, well, that's an interesting title. Um, and the fact that it's an election sermon. Now, you may not be familiar with election sermons, but from certainly the founding of this country for, well, it would appear maybe as many as 100 years, maybe even more, it was not uncommon that there would be an election sermon scheduled. And so this was interesting because on the day that I'm doing this, maybe you're watching it live, and that's cool, but maybe you'll come across this later. But the day that I'm doing this live stream, it's the day after the elections of 2025. And so that's kind of interesting because if if we in this country continued that um, wonderful tradition of election sermons, what that would mean is that on the day that those who are elected to office actually take office, right, begin their term as elected officials, they would be called before a local minister who would preach a sermon. And the intention of the sermon would be to instruct them in their duties as Christian rulers. So, okay, that's unique. So that's what this is, an election sermon. It was preached before the executive and legislative departments of the government of Massachusetts in Hollis Street Church, Boston, Wednesday, January 7, 1874. I guess our minister is Richard Gleason Greene. I don't know anything about him. Um, but yeah, that's the sermon title, Christianity and National Law. So let's explore this, see what we can learn. I don't know how long this will go. I guess I'll go till I get tired or maybe try to keep to an hour, whatever. But yeah, we'll just explore as much of this as seems reasonable. And if we get through all of it, which we probably won't, given that it's 52 pages, uh, we will um, pick it up next time. Okay. So there were some, I don't know, comments here about different individuals, right? And one thing that's interesting is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the House of Representatives, ordered that 3,000 copies of this sermon be printed under the direction of the Committee on Printing for the use of the executive and legislative branches of the government. So it wasn't, don't just hear this, keep this with you and read it. Okay. All right, so let's get into the text and see what we can find out here. O generation, see ye the word of the Lord. Have I been a wilderness unto Israel, a land of darkness? Wherefore say my people, we are lords, we will come no more unto thee. And so this is from Jeremiah 2:31. Jeremiah 2:31. I guess that's his text that he's going to draw from for a sermon. Okay, into the sermon itself. One of the questions prominent in the public thought of today concerns the relation of Christianity and civil government in our land. Well, right, here we are 150 years later, right? If my math works out there. And there's some concerns about that, right? There's people that are talking about this topic. So it seems, I don't know, relevant. It is a vast question having its references to wide fields of history and political economy and involving profound problems of ethics and statesmanship. It is, moreover, an urgent question. I don't know, my highlighter's not really highlighting well, is it? Let me see if we switch to a different color here and it'll be better. It is an urgent question, crowded by popular pressure through many side channels of debate, and by the same pressure, the atmospheric pressure of our new social life, driven imperiously toward its main and ultimate issue. Yeah, I guess they had their own version of social media, right? Their own version of ways in which people would communicate about um, relevant topics in their day. This main issue is not to be evaded. It cannot be much longer postponed by either the state or the church. Yes, I don't know if we feel about that way today about this particular issue. I think there's many that would love to postpone it or just ignore it. To bring some considerations on this theme so momentous, so difficult, and already so involved with partisanship, isn't that just a description of the um, contemporary issue of the relationship between Christianity and the state, right? May, through your patience, be permitted to a humble minister of Jesus Christ, honored by the civil power, with a call to stand and utter such message as the Lord gives him in this dignified presence, and in that noble succession of preachers who have adorned this usage of our fathers. Okay, that's just his fancy way of saying, I consider it an honor to be here to continue this long tradition of um, giving sermons to those who are newly elected to office. Yet so undeveloped must be the thoughts advanced in this brief hour that they can claim to be nothing more than suggestions whose incompleteness opens them to easy misconstruction. In view of which fact, it is encouraging to reflect that the wise need no man to come and do their thinking for them, but can use even feeble hints as materials for the fabric of their opinion. Okay, so here's what he's relying upon. He's relying upon that the individuals before him are wise. Because if they are wise, his incomplete suggestions can be used as materials for the fabric of these wise forming their opinion. Okay, so here's a question. I'm going to change my color here for questions just to maybe help me think about it. Is Christianity to be recognized as standing in any organic and legal connection whatever with our civil government? Okay, so there's a question for you. Does Christianity have any real substantive connection to our civil government? You must have noticed uh, that the answers to this question from the high places of both the state and the church are different today from the answers given by our fathers. Now, I don't know how far back he's going um, for fathers there, but he ends up saying here, or even from those of less than a score of years since. So score, 4 score and 7 years ago, right? What's a score? Um, 20 years? Um, I'm looking at my Webster's 1828. I don't see him where he defines it that way, but fourscore and 20 years ago. Oh no, it's a score, 20, yeah. Fourscore, yeah. Um, so 20 years, right? So he's saying even as recent as 20 years ago, the way that people would answer this question is different than the way that people are answering the question in 1874. The public drift, the public drift, okay? Now, without even reading the rest of that sentence, that doesn't sound good. Drifting doesn't sound good, right? Drifting is what you do when you lose control. You have no power. You have no, like, you lose the oars on the on the rowboat and you're drifting, right? Already strong toward utter separateness in the administration of these two great elements is setting in with increasing power each successive year. Okay, so it sounds like our minister here is saying, I don't, this isn't good, the direction it's going. It's going towards utter separateness. Okay. Now, I mean, this is after Thomas Jefferson's A Wall of Separation between church and state, which was a private letter, not those words don't even show up in the Constitution. I don't think anywhere in the Constitution do any of those words show up, but um, at least those keywords. The question now wakes negative answers on all sides like echoes. Wow. So he's saying that in 1874, if you're going to ask the question in 1874, is there an organic and legal connection between Christianity and the civil government? Now, 1874, that is, you get negative answers. You get negative answers, fervent negatives from the pulpit, learned negatives from the bench. I guess that would be judges. Crisp negatives from the press. That would be the press. Thunderous negatives from the political rostrum. It is not for us to assert that the very soul of wisdom, wandering through dry places, seeking rest and finding none, has not at last housed itself fitly within the body of these answers. But we may take liberty of noting that not always do these swift, popular, easy answers of the day fit the great question which we are impelled to ask. Okay, so what he's suggesting here is that in 1874, we're getting easy answers. And the easy answers are not standing up to the great question. There may be a fair body and a proper soul, yet not the man who was summoned. Thus, when it is asked by earnest men, all right, so here's that question again. I'm going to change my color here for these questions. Is Christianity to have any recognized administration in our civil government? It will not suffice to cast up coruscating negatives. Put something in the comments there if you know what that word means, or the last time you used that word, coruscating. I'm looking in my Webster's 1828 here. Coruscate, he's got. To flash, to lighten, to glitter. He doesn't actually have the word for skating, but a coruscate, I guess, is coruscate. To flash, to lighten, to glitter. Coruscation, a flash, a sudden burst of light in the clouds or atmosphere. The light produced by the combustion of inflammable gas in the earth. So this is a flash, glittery flash. So it will not suffice to cast up coruscating negatives, flashy negatives, to the questions whether there shall be persecution for opinion's sake. All right, so what he's saying there is like, I don't know, you could be canceled for not having the right opinion about this question. Is that what he's saying? Whether there shall be a usurpation of the liberty of conscience, whether there shall be a union of church, meaning a sect, and state, being a sect there, I think that it would be proper for us to think of that as a denomination. Whether it be fit or safe for the state to teach a theology, whether the nation shall be compelled to enact the dumb show of a formal compliment in recognition of God by crowding his great name edgewise into its constitution. Okay, so he seems to be throwing out um, these scenarios that I think he is saying this isn't, when we're asking this question, it's not this that we're really getting at. It's not, is there going to be a state church? Is there going to be a denomination that gets favored? That's not what we're asking about. Um, uh, Maybe we're not even really asking about um, the state teaching the theology. Let's see where he goes with this. But this, whether the nation shall be compelled to enact the dumb show of a formal compliment in recognition of God by crowding his great name edgewise into its constitution. Right. So he's not even, I think when he's asking this question about um, what's going to be the connection between Christianity and civil government, I think he's arguing here, suggesting here that I'm not asking for um, what we might call virtue signaling today. Oh, well, okay, let's go ahead and put some, you know, recognition of God in the Constitution, and there, we're done. We've done it. All these questions may be magnificently answered on any 4th of July before applauding crowds. And yet the passing years that bring all nations under heaven to stern, inevitable account at last before the bar of human conscience and in the presence of the eternal God may be sad witnesses to the neglect of this nation to answer aright on a point involving its very existence. Wow. The neglect of this nation. Right. So he's saying on 4th of July, when everybody's, all caught up in the patriotic spirit, yeah, people will throw out platitudes related to that question. But the truth of the matter is found in what follows, and no action, nothing is done, and a nation that is neglecting to answer aright this question is um, moving ever closer to the inevitable account it must give before God himself. Let us reduce to its lowest terms the whole problem of the relation of state and religion. Let us discharge from it all side issues. Let us put into words specific enough to point us to some definite principle, yet generic and flexible enough to allow a wide diversity of methods for the wisdom of statesmanship. Let the people stand and answer like men, whether, back to our question here, whether Christianity is to have any recognized administration in civil government in this land. I bet you never knew that the very things that we're seeing debated today regarding, Christian nationalism, and, there's, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 different camps or types of Christian nationalism that goes on out there. And you know, there are those who argue against it, and I don't even think they know what they're arguing against. Um, Probably never knew that the debates already happened. The elected officials, at least in Massachusetts, were confronted with this question, and I'm presuming that we will find our way to an answer here as we work through this sermon. All right. Let it be noted that our question is of Christianity, not of any sect or creed or way of worship or polity of ecclesiasticism, of the administration of Christianity, not of its establishment, propagation, or defense. of a recognized administration, not of one which is latent or unacknowledged. Okay, so he's really breaking down his question here, right? Because he said that it's our question is of Christianity, right? Not a sect or denomination, not the creed, not a patterns of worship, or whether what church polity, church government there's going to be. And it's of the administration of Christianity, not of its establishment, right? Congress shall make no law, right? First Amendment. Propagation or defense of a, hopefully he's going to flesh out exactly what he means by these things, of a recognized administration, not one which is latent or unacknowledged, right? I mean, to me, this is saying that is it going to be the case that the government recognizes that the way in which they administer their duties is rooted in Christianity? Of any recognized administration, not of any certain reach and degree of such administration, but of any, even the least, of an administration in civil government, not over government as a power above a power above a power, nor by the side of government as a power coordinate, nor by government as an instrument, but in it and through it as vitally inseparable from it. Okay, so that smallest word in his question may be the word of most interest. Um, in government, through government, as vitally inseparable from it. No checking your Christianity at the door. And in fact, maybe even, what are you doing coming in here to the halls of government without Christianity to assist you? Apologize for the interruption there. Happens with live streaming, I guess. We'll return to our sermon here. Now I'm going to be attacked by a cat. This is just really professional, isn't it? All right. Um, all right. Number one, every civil government must unavoidably have a religion of some kind and must stand in some recognized administration of it. Okay, well, that's interesting. The question here is not what governments ought to do, but what they cannot avoid doing. And the fact, as stated, is involved in the very nature and idea of government among men. It is impossible to conceive of a civil state as existing altogether aside from some embodiment of ethical relations. And it is impossible to think of ethical relations except as rooted in some ground of moral principles. And moral principles, which we may well say cannot exist without a spiritual basis. We may surely assert cannot be enforced without a reference to some facts and forces which stand above man, yet which testify of themselves within man. And the recognition and application of these facts and forces to human conduct is one of the main workings of religion. Okay, now that was a really long sentence, and so we may want to read through it again, but um, it seems to me that this minister is um, essentially doing what um, George Washington asserted, that you can't have morality without virtue, and you can't have virtue without religion. And I think he goes on to say, and that religion is the Christian religion. In fact, one of the things that we have to get clear in our thinking in this day and age is that when we read our founding documents and they reference religion, they mean Christianity. That's what they mean. If they mean something other than Christianity, okay, they're going to in some way modify. They're going to say um, false religions, or they'll say the religions of the world, right, to be inclusive of others. But when they say Congress shall make no law establishing a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, they're not thinking about Buddhism and Judaism and Islam. They're thinking about Christianity, right? That's what they're thinking about, is Christianity. Um, and so, again, this sentence here, I think he is really just borrowing from George Washington, that right, if there's going to be morality, there must be virtue, and if there's going to be virtue, there must be Christianity. The ethical conceptions may be rude, the moral principles dimly seen, the spiritual facts greatly obscured or greatly misapprehended. But these, such as they are, give a religion, and they give it, and they must give it, to every national organism among men. Even Aristotle wrote, the government of laws is the government of God. Right? So our preacher is saying that um, it's inescapable. The elements of religion, and I'm sure he's going to go on and specifically say Christianity, must be given to every national organism among men. Okay. Well, we have a national government among us, don't we? All right, number one, the mere existence of any deity necessitates this state of facts. Whatever is must have some relation or bearing toward everything else that is. And the relation in the case of God toward men must assume some form of government, since he can be thought of not as inferior to men, nor as merely one among men, but only as the higher power, and in lands and times educated by Christianity as the supreme power. Okay, so he's arguing that there must be a connection between Christianity and government because of the existence of the deity, the existence of God, who is the higher power, the supreme power. Which simply means that this minister acknowledges the sovereignty of God. That's what sovereignty means, the supreme power. Hence, the very idea of government derived from God lives among men only as he lives in the thought of men. Wherefore, a shutting out of religion or the system of divine facts from all governmental concern is as impossible to man as the shutting out of vital air from the natural world. Okay, so he's arguing the very idea of government only makes sense as he, God, lives in the thought of men, and that if you turn to a shutting out of religion, you're doing something that is impossible. You're undermining the very idea of government. I don't know, what do you end up with? Anarchy, chaos, riots, right? Um, the burning down of buildings and uh, fighting in the streets. But this only prepares the line of our main evidence, which may be stated thus. Okay, so here's our main evidence. This sounds important. I'm going to change my color here. And if God exists, then he must exist as a fact too mighty and all pervasive to be shut out from any sphere of human interests. Wow. Now, of course, you're going to have plenty of people that say, well, God doesn't exist. Well, um, stop lying. Okay. According to scripture, everybody knows that God is, right? The sin in that regard of everyone is not, um, it's not that they are um, helpless because, well, there's just not enough evidence to prove to me that God is there. The sin is the suppressing of that truth, the pushing down of that truth, um, and pretending that God doesn't exist. Okay, so God, as we understand him from the scriptures, must be involved in every sphere of human interests. If he be anywhere, he must be everywhere. Least of all can he be shut out from a sphere so large and momentous as that which a nation fills when it organizes itself for the maintenance of social order and the securing of the public weal. That word weal just means the public health, but more than the public health, the public good. Um, I'm going to my Webster's 1828. We'll see. Weal, a sound state of a person or thing, a state which is prosperous or at least not unfortunate, not declining. Happiness. You know, um, that's something that we entirely misunderstand today. Um, when in the founding father generation, when they talked about happiness, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, okay, that word for them is not like we use. Oh, that makes me happy, right? We get a bowl of ice cream and we're happy, right? Um, too often we have parents that say, well, I don't care what you do, I just want you to be happy. And we think it's some kind of good feelings, right? And there is that kind of happiness, but that's not what they were talking about. Um, the happiness they were talking about was actually a spiritual and I think legal concept. Um, and yeah, so our pastor here, if we were at this election sermon, what we're hearing our pastor preach is, um, look, the God of the Bible, he's the God of every area, every sphere of human interest. And um, that's even the large and momentous areas of human interest, like government. So much of deity as a nation may know will find or make its way into that nation's laws and will appear there not as intruder, but as owner. Okay, so I like these little nuggets that are in here, right? Hello, Kitty. These nuggets of, yeah, God's not an intruder on our law. Well, you can't impose your morality on me. Wait a minute. God's the owner of law, right? So any law that's a good law is God's law, right? The moment a law becomes a bad law, it's that's the intruder. The law that is made up out of the imaginations of men right? That law that is for the purpose of giving license to men to behave in sinful ways as though they're not sinful ways. That's the intruder to the law. Not as a natural fault, which could not be averted and must, so far as possible, be concealed or denied, but as a living force whose absence would vacate the national life itself. Oh man, that's another great phrase right there. Like, just think about the circumstance of our country today. Um, that uh, as we've moved away from God's law being our law, um, we've seen the life sucked out of this nation. We are we are a dying nation. We need restoration. We need the restorative power of that living force, which is God's law as the owner of our laws, and whose working, therefore, whether ostentatiously proclaimed or not, will at least not be repressed and will have some provision for its efficiency. Right. So it seems like our pastor here is saying, the question isn't how loudly it's proclaimed that the law is God's law, but let's certainly stop doing things like, well, the Word of God doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing here in the halls of the legislature or whatever. Um, All right, so we've got a hypothetical situation being set up here. If a nation then, by word or by act, announce as its legal policy that it has no governmental concern with God or the divine facts, that nation wastes ink and parchment in an insult to the deity, which can have no effect except to degrade and endanger its government. It creates confusion by law. How insightful, how perceptive, how perfectly descriptive of our current circumstance, right? Our government is endangered. Our government has been degraded because we have wasted ink and paper in as an insult to the deity because we live as though um, there is no governmental concern with God. All right, so I'm talking in generalities, right? Your favorite politician may be somebody who is, you know, faithful to God's word, and that's great. Obviously, we need them, and we need more of them. Um, but in the main, on the whole, I mean, just think about the laws that have been passed recently, and without regard to um, God. Okay, so this was number one, right? This was uh, the mere existence of God necessitates that there be a concern about God in the governmental function, just because God is there. Number two, the nature of man adds another phase to the same argument. Okay, so it seems to me, we'll see how this goes here, but it seems to me that like the first argument there is looking at it from God's perspective. I am here, I am not silent. It is sinfully wrong to ignore me in every sphere of your life, including your polity. Now it seems like this is going to be maybe the other side of that coin from the perspective of man. Of this nature, we know but little, but we surely know that man is more than an animal. Well, we hope that people know that. We see and feel that he not only ought to have, but has a spiritual element, which is not merely an item of his being, but is the one nucleating and characteristic point in that being. Okay. So, yeah, it's interesting that people who otherwise would make no claims to believing in God or even believing in anything spiritual, um, anything other than the material, when a calamity happens, right? A tornado takes down their house, or a flood comes in and washes things away. Well, I do believe that things happen for a reason. And it's like, what are you talking about? You believe that all of the universe is just atoms randomly colliding with each other and stuff happens. Like, how do you get a purpose out of that? Um, the reason they say that is because they're a spiritual being. That's the way they were created by God, right? Um, and as Romans 1 tells us, all of us in our sinful nature, we know we're guilty before God, and our whole life is spent trying to figure out how to manage that guilt. But thankfully, there's one cure for the guilt, right? You don't have to manage it. The guilt can be resolved, it can be removed, right? But everybody who resists the gospel message, right, they're whistling in the dark. They're doing all kinds of things, right? I'm going to prove that I am um, good enough to overcome the guilt, or I'm going to prove that I'm, courageous enough that I'm going to live in a way that, just maximizes everything that is risky and dangerous about living. Um, Try to cover the guilt through numbing myself with whatever I'm shooting up or drinking or and that the moral in him, the moral in man, aligning him to the divine is not a compartment additional to his lower nature, into which he comes at certain times and out of which he passes for certain purposes, but is in him from God as a pervasive life which, transfused through his whole constitution, can be neither destroyed as a whole nor omitted from any smallest region of his activity without so far vacating his very humanity. Okay, there's a lot of words in there. I'm not sure I followed all of it, but it seems to me that one thing that's being pointed out is that even in our sinful condition, there is still this hint or remnant of morality, because even those of us who just continue in our sinful ways, we still have thoughts of, well, that's just wrong, right? We're living a life of being abusive to others, taking from others, without regard to their ownership of things or feelings about things or what have you. And then we have the gall or whatever to say, well, man, that's just wrong. That's evil, as we throw judgment out on someone else. And like, on what basis are we saying this? That a thing is evil? What's our basis for that? If my whole life is rooted in, I pretend my whole life is rooted in, I make my own decisions about what's good and bad. My calling something else good or bad is inconsequential because everybody else is making those decisions about what's good and what's bad for themselves. And so I just become a clanging cymbal in the ears of others who are, well, I'm making my choices. I'm making my decisions. Don't don't impinge on me exercising my will. And what this pastor is saying is that if that's the direction things go, that is stripping the very humanity out of people, right? As people pursue what they pretend is the prison of freedom of just freely exercising their sinful will, they are becoming unhuman. This moral spiritual element may administer itself wrongly in man, for it is of the nature of liberty, but it will have some administration in every operation of its faculties. And this, whatever it may be, will do its part in constituting his religion. Right? So he now seems to be building a definition, a working definition of religion. And he is suggesting that whatever coalesces within a person that begins to exercise administration over the operation of that person's faculties, that's religion. If then it be impossible for man to divest himself of his moral and spiritual attributes in any realm of his activity, how evident is that impossibility in the department of government, which expressly involves his morality in its relation to society? Law without God loses all its perspective. I've told myself that I want to start, I need to really start. I want to start what's called a common book. And a common book is, any place that you would record whenever you're reading and you come to meaningful sentences or quotes and such, you place them into that common book and you might, categorize, like here I might categorize this under the heading of government or something. And because I think this is a great turn of phrase, law without God loses all its perspective. I need to remember that, not only for my own understanding of the place of law and what law should be and how government should operate. But I need to remember that because that's an effective statement that I need to have at the ready when I find myself in discussions with others about government and Christianity and laws. And people need to hear so that people know that law without God loses all its perspective. It is impossible to depict social morality as flattened to the surface of this little world. And for the purpose of this argument, it is not necessary to prove that the deity exists. For even though there be no God, man is so made that he never will, never can fully discover that fact. He may make easy experiments in the direction of that disbelief. He may have a transient seeming success therein, but ever and ever his old, ineradicable moral nature returns upon him like a throbbing tide from the infinite ocean of the spiritual universe, whose surge, murmuring or thundering from afar, rolls in and breaks at his feet with the echoes of eternity, the syllables of God. This might be a good place to stop because it seems like I'm about to cry, but that's beautiful statement there. That's just beautiful. I mean, the pastor here is asserting that, people can put out all kinds of effort to convince themselves that there is no God. And they think in that they have found justification and rationalization for whatever way they want to behave or whatever way they want to govern themselves. But it doesn't last because it's not true. And as he says here, man cannot remove himself from his own moral nature with which he was created. And in time, it will come back on him like a throbbing tide from the infinite ocean. And the surge and the thundering from afar rolls in and breaks at his feet. And in that, what does he hear? He hears the God who is not silent. And all that effort he put into trying to convince himself that there really is no God and it really is okay that I can live whatever way I want. We don't have to worry about God when it comes to government of our community or government of our nation. Doesn't matter. But all comes crashing back as those waves come crashing onto the shore. And what is it? It's the unsilent God who crashes at their feet. All right, so I've made it to page 15. I think I did a pretty good job getting through making progress on the 52 pages here, but made it to page 15. And we haven't even gotten to the real substance of his argument. We haven't even answered the real question. What is this connection between Christianity and the nation? Do we truly assert that Christianity is a national law? Well, we've got more to read. We'll have to do that next time. I hope you found this challenging and edifying, and it's given you much to think about. And we'll pick up here, page 15, with point number 3 next week on Midweek Study. Hope you join me. Please do share the video. I guess the whole routine of I'm not very good at this, but subscribe, like, and share. I don't know, some notification bell. You know the routine, but yeah, let's see if we can grow this and we can get some conversation going in the comments about what it is that we're reading and what it might be challenging us with. Yeah, Christian nationalism, a topic today, but it was a topic 150 years ago. And a pastor was willing to stand up in front of elected officials and assert Christianity, a national law. Let's learn more about it next week as we continue with our midweek studies.